Hello, hello. My name is Sam. I am the founder of the Color Palette Studio, and I am so happy to welcome you to the free workshop, How to Pair Fonts with Color Palettes. This is such an important topic and honestly so much fun. Fonts and colors are like siblings. They belong together. You really can't have a brand without fonts or without colors. And I spend so much time talking about brand colors, but I really want to focus with that same sort of precision and obsessive fun energy on fonts. So that's what we're going to do today. Um, just like a few sort of tips, I like to say this at the start of every workshop. If you can, put your phone away, turn off Slack, like be here now, because we're going to cover a ton of stuff in a short amount of time, and I don't want you to miss anything good. And also, feel free to take notes, but I will be sending all of the replay or the recording replay out later, so you can go back and see the slides and watch topics that I cover if you want to cover something a second time. And I can see the webinar chat. So if you want to ask questions or leave comments, you can do that. I'm going to be glancing at it while I teach. But I've also got Chris Rembolt, who is my husband and the developer of all of our apps. He is going to be running the chat. So if you have specific questions, he should be able to help you out. He's got a handy dandy list of links that he can send out too. All right, so let's all get to know each other a little bit. And before before we dive into that, I know we've probably got some designers or some design nerds in here, and I just want to say on the front end, the font I'm using for this presentation is Mabry Pro. I believe it's by Commercial Type. It's one of my favorite fonts, and it's a question I would be asking or thinking about. So I'm going to tell you. Okay, in the chat box, where are you calling from? Where's everyone calling from? Denver, Colorado. Okay. Oklahoma City, Madison, Wisconsin. Taylor, were you at the last workshop? I feel like I've seen your name before. Hi, Taylor. I went to UW-Madison, so I'm always happy to see you in Madison. Okay, we've got Chicago, Louisville, Long Beach, California, Houston, Palmer, Alaska. Wow, Rob, welcome. New York, New Hampshire, New York City, Austin, San Diego, Washington. Oh my goodness. Los Angeles. Wow, we are calling from everywhere. A lot of Chicago folks, suburban Chicago. I'm from like the Aurora area. Hi. Okay, so good. Well, I love to see where we're all calling from, and it just makes me so happy that we're able to kind of come in and hang out and just really enjoy the beauty of graphic design and also like the fun of it, because I'll be honest with you, I did not go to design school. I don't have formal design training. I'm a self-taught designer, and I think that there's so much fun that can be had in design that can potentially be lost in like really formal programs. So I'm just so happy that you're all here and that we can like agree that design can be fun and joyful. So fun. Oh, Haley, Batavia, and St. Charles. Oh my goodness, I spent lots of time there. Okay, in the chat box, what is your current favorite font? Is there a font that you're just like vibing with lately? I always love to know. Okay, Ricoleta. Oh, yes. Such a good one. Roca 2, Railway, Poppins, Poppins. Poppins always gets some love. Amalfi Coast. Chris says a Persu or a Percu. I never know how to say it. That is the font on my sweater. That's why he's saying that. We love that font in this home. Um, September, Avenir. Avenir is such a good one. TT Chocolates. Ooh. Is TT tan type, Sydney? I always love tan type stuff. It's always so like display-esque and kind of funky in a good way. Proxima Nova. Aaron, Proxima Nova is one of the first fonts that I was like, ooh, I love it. I can't put my finger on why, but I just love how like clean and simple and just kind of dependable she is. Okay. Oh, we have a good fun range here. I love this. Well, I'm Sam. I'm a graphic designer and color palette expert based in Nashville, Tennessee. I make tools and resources to help brands create perfect color palettes and font pairings. I love my job so much. To give you a tiny bit of background, I used to be a full-time brand and web designer, and I was like a jack of all trades designer. So I did like custom illustrations, custom logos. I would do full brand projects, full web design projects. And then I was like, oh, maybe I'll learn how to code. And then I did full coding. I realized that I did not love doing all of that. And I wanted to focus on the things that I really loved to do. So I decided to start an agency called the Color Palette Studio that was entirely focused on color palettes. And I loved zoning in on these individual parts of the brand journey and making tools and resources for those individual parts to make all of our lives a lot easier. Okay, so we are going to cover so much stuff today. It's going to feel like I'm going fast, but I promise I'm going to try to keep it easy and also comfortable for like all skill levels. So whether you're like a newbie designer or you're a seasoned designer or you're an entrepreneur who's coming in to work on font pairings for your own brand, there's going to be something really good for you in here. But we're going to start with some typography basics. And the first thing we're going to cover is typeface versus font. So like, what's the difference between a typeface and a font? A typeface refers to a style of lettering, but a font refers to an individual version of that, of that typeface. So here, this is Playfair Display. The typeface is Playfair Display. So there are lots of different variations of it, but the general like design of the font is Playfair Display. But Playfair Display Medium is a font. So it's an individual version of that typeface. My friend Jen Wagner, who's a typeface designer and my neighbor, she put it in a really cool way. She said something along the lines of like, a carton of eggs is the typeface and an individual egg is the font. And that's how I like to remember it too. It's a semantics thing. But I just like to give you a little bit of a heads up that I'm going to be using the phrase fonts because it's just a little bit more natural for me. But I should be saying typeface sometimes. So during this presentation, I want you to understand the differences between typeface and fonts and realize that I'm going to be probably using the word fonts more just for sake of simplicity. There are lots of different font categories. There are serifs, sans serifs, display fonts, script fonts, monospace fonts. There are even more than this, but these are all that I have time to cover today. So these are some of the categories that we're going to be covering. Out of all these two in the chat, which ones do you tend to gravitate towards the most? Are you like a serif fan? You like displays? You like scripts? Scripts, yes, okay. Serif and script. Oh, such a classy combo. Sans serif, sans serif. Yes. Oh, some of us like to mix our fonts. I'm loving that. I do too. Okay. I don't know if I saw any monospace lovers. I've been kind of on a monospace kick. I don't know. It's like once you try it and it like works, you kind of lean into it. Okay. Well, this is gonna be fun. So serif fonts feature small lines or decorative strokes at the ends of their letters. And that's actually what a serif is. So like this little line at the end of the A, that's a serif. That's where serif fonts get their names. Type a 1 if that's new information for you. If you did not know that that's what made a serif font. Oh, cool. Okay. These provide a more traditional, formal, and classic appearance. So they're just sort of like what we think of when we think of a traditional typeface. Now, sans serif, on the other hand, literally means without serifs. So when we look at sans serif fonts or sans serifs, if we're pronouncing it the right way, there are no serifs at the ends of these letters. There are no little lines. They just have clean cutoffs. These are characterized by clean, simple lines without decorative strokes at the ends of the letters, and they have a more modern and streamlined look. So if you're trying to tell the difference between a serif and a sans serif, just pay attention to if there are little like lines or strokes at the ends of the letters. It won't be on every letter, like O's usually don't have any little lines, but like your C's or your F's, they will have something. And then we have display fonts. Display fonts are what I would call like your funky, fun, attention-grabbing fonts. They're really good to use for large sizes, for headings or advertisements. And they are, like I said, attention-grabbing, more extroverted fonts, not suitable for body text. There is a type studio called TanType, T-A-N, and they make a ton of really cool display fonts. Sometimes they're abbreviated as TT and then the font name. So if you'll see those in like Canva or like a design program, they look really cool and fun. And there's so many different designers who make fun display fonts. Script fonts mimic handwriting. ranging from elegant calligraphy styles like this to casual cursive designs or handwritten feels. This one is definitely more on like the elegant, like wedding side. But there's a huge range of script fonts, which we're going to cover. And monospace fonts. These are known as fixed width fonts, and they allocate the same horizontal space to each character, and that resembles the output of a typewriter. So this is the monospace version of my brand font, which is Mabry. So I use Mabry Sans here. So this is Mabry Sans Medium, Mabry Sans regular, and then this is Mabry Mono medium, I think. So you can see how the families sort of play together. Monospace fonts, I think, are really fun, and if you haven't played with them before, I encourage you to do so. There are some really great free ones on Google Fonts, which we'll cover later, but they make great body fonts, and they can also make great subheading fonts. Okay, so now we're going to cover the psychology of different typefaces. So this is going to be real deep, real fun. Fonts can, whether we mean them to or not, influence our psychology. And sometimes this happens through memory, and sometimes this happens through associated meanings. So in the chat box, just like when you instantly see this font, how does this font make you feel? Nervous, psychedelic, sick, anxious, dizzy, queasy. Oh, okay. I don't want to make you look at that any longer. Yeah, but it's clear that there's like a universal vibe that font makes us feel. Okay, how does this font make you feel? Elegant, fancy, wedding vibes, like a tea party, fancy, elegant, vintage movie, romantic. Yeah, isn't it funny how the first font kind of universally made us all feel like a little icky, a little nervous, and then this font makes us feel like formal and fancy. How does this font make you feel? Bold, rebellious, nostalgic for the 90s, edgy, bold, comic book rebel. Bold is very common. This is cool. Anna called it. This is the font that they used for the show Friends. So if you associate it with the show Friends or the 90s, that's why. So it's clear that each type of font or each individual font sort of has like a psychological impact. So there are overarching themes that happen with different categories of fonts. So I'm going to cover each one of those. Serifs tend to make us feel traditional. They elicit feelings of respectability, elegance, of formality, and of authority. So that's why we see a lot of like news publications or magazines or banks wanting to use serif fonts because they instantly give some sort of like formality or trustworthiness to them. They feel stable. Sans serifs are very common these days. Sans serifs elicit feelings of modernity. They make you feel clean, approachable, innovative, and minimalistic. And we see a ton of tech companies using sans serif fonts. They want to appear really modern and forward thinking. I believe Google used to use a serif font in their logo, and then they evolved into a sans serif font. I'm sure there was a design team that was like very well paid to think about those things. But I'm assuming that they wanted to appear more modern and like with the times and innovative. And Chris said Apple did too. Yeah, you're going to notice a lot of like tech companies that used to use a serif font sometime in the early 2000s graduated to a sans serif. But super, super common. And they're clean. They're easy to read. They look great. Script fonts make us feel elegant. They elicit feelings of creativity. They give it a personal touch. They feel romantic or nostalgic. Coca-Cola is a great example. We feel a little bit romantic and nostalgic when we see this logo. Kleenex, this has just such a personal touch. It kind of feels like handwritten, like, I don't know, maybe your mom wrote it out and like really, well done cursive. Disney, it's got a very creative feel to it. So script fonts can feel very, very personal, whether you use them for logos or you use them for like your brand heading font. Display fonts can elicit feelings of uniqueness, creativity, personality, boldness, or impact. Because they're such extroverted fonts, they're great for brands that want to like go the extra extroverted, mile, and stand out a little bit more. So like Lego is a great example. Another brand that I've been following for the last year is OG Slimes. They're like a slime company. I found them on TikTok. I bought too many slimes, but they have like a really cool display, funky vibe with their fonts, and it works really great for their brand. Now, there are psychological impacts within each type of font. So, like serifs are not a one size fits all. Script fonts, for example, can have many different vibes within it. So, like, we could go for an elegant script font like this, a very swoopy, very calligraphy style. We could also go for something personal that feels like you hand wrote it with a Sharpie. I love that style. We could go nostalgic. Doesn't this kind of remind you of like a Coke bottle or the Coke logo, or something you would see in um, like a nostalgia inspired coffee shop? Or we could go rustic, kind of go for like a semi-nostalgic, but more distressed feel. So script fonts are not always going to feel elegant or fancy. They can go so many different ways. And the same goes for serif fonts, sans serif fonts, display fonts. Like there are a lot of different branches on those trees, but the main part of the tree can be categorized usually into like serif or sans serif. Typo 1, does that make sense? And if you have any questions too about this stuff, feel free to throw them in the chat. I just want to make sure that I'm not leaving anyone behind. Okay, good. Good. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how to customize fonts, because we know we might be able to like select a font, but then we might be wondering how to actually customize it for your brand. I am going to go through this part a little bit quicker because there are some visuals in here that kind of help explain it if you want to deep dive into it further. But when you are building out a font menu, you should decide on your font customizations and stick to the plan. Sticking to the plan is like the most important part of branding. So like for this heading font here, Rowie, I think it's called, there are going to be rules that we assign for how it's going to be used. And we're going to cover those things today, like font weight, letter spacing, all that. Because if you change some of those rules, the font is going to feel a lot different, or potentially could feel a lot different. So one of the things that you want to just identify on the front end when you're working on your branding is letter spacing. And that is simply the amount of space between each letter. So that can be low, where they're kind of squeezed together. The letters are squeezed together. It can be regular, which is what I usually recommend, or it can be high, where you space letters apart. I would never really mess with this for body fonts, but if you want to do this for like your heading font or a subheading font, you totally can adjust the letter spacing. You can also adjust the line height, which is the space between lines of text. So you can squeeze the lines a little bit closer together, or you can just leave it as the type designer regularly wanted it to be, or you can make it have high line height. So there's more space between lines. Just like letter spacing, I tend to not mess with this unless it's for like a heading font. Font weight is how thick the font is. So that's exactly what it sounds like. It can be thin or hairline. It can be regular, or it can be bold. For body fonts, I tend to stick to regular. I don't like to go super light because then it can get kind of hard to read. And bold is great for like subheading fonts, but typically I just leave it as a regular font weight unless I'm trying to like make a statement or bring the font weight into the vibe. Transformations. This just means, are your letters going to be all lowercase? Are they going to be normal case, like where the first letter of a sentence is capitalized and proper nouns are capitalized? Or is it going to be all uppercase? I would definitely not mess with this for body fonts. But for heading fonts or subheading fonts, you might want to play around with it. You might want like your subheading fonts to all be uppercase, or maybe all be lowercase. Like Ariana Grande did song titles all in lowercase for a while. I think a couple artists have done that. It can like totally send a vibe and feel a certain way, but definitely not what I recommend for body fonts. Body fonts, we just don't mess with. We let them be what they're supposed to be. And that is a great segue into the topic that I'm really excited to cover, which is heading fonts versus body fonts. So I love SNL. Big SNL fan. And I like to describe the differences between heading fonts and body fonts like this. Your heading font is going to be the host of the episode for the week. So, like Pedro Pascal would be the host for an episode, and he would be considered like the heading font. Your body font is either like the cast members or the background actors. They're really important to round out the scene, and usually they play like a really important role. But when you think of the episode on Monday, or you're describing the episode or a sketch to a friend on Monday, you're probably not thinking about like background actors number 1 and 2. You're probably thinking about Pedro Pascal. So when you think of your brand, you always think of the heading font. Your body font should be good and stable and perform very well, but it shouldn't be memorable. Like you wouldn't want this background actor to do something that was so memorable that you talked about it at on Monday. Which in my experience, I don't think any background actors that I know of have have broken significantly. But the host or the cast usually will. So there are different roles for your heading font and your body font. Your heading font's role is to catch attention. It's to capture someone's attention, whether it's with like a title or a product name, or like the top of a slide. Your body font, its role is to deliver information. So to get really meta here, this is a heading font and this is a body font for this presentation. So like when you first look at the slide, you're going to see heading fonts and body fonts. And then when you want to get more information, you're going to read this stuff below it. Your heading fonts can be sometimes extroverted. They don't have to be extroverted, but they can be if you want. You can use like a display font or a fun little script font. Your body fonts should always, always, always be introverted. I think that your heading fonts should match your brand's personality and design style. So where you can sort of like express yourself or express your brand's vibe is through your heading font. But your body fonts should be boring. And I know that sounds like maybe a bad word, boring, but I never want people to feel like they should get fancy with their body fonts because it will usually backfire. You just don't want to get too fancy. The more boring your body font, the better of a job you're doing as a designer, truly. And just to kind of send that message home, your body font should never, ever, ever look like this. It should be introverted and calm and simple. And I apologize if my dog is distracting. She's just decided to choose now to hit her face, and Chris is getting her. Thank you, babe. Okay. Here are some of my favorite body fonts. And you can see these are usually a sans serif or a serif font, very, very like pulled back. You would not think of any of these as like extroverted. They are pulled back, calm, clean, easy to read, very introverted. And when I asked at the beginning of the presentation, like, what's your favorite font? Some of you named fonts that were in here. Like I remember seeing Railway, and these are fonts that you'll see in a lot of programs, like Squarespace kind of has them pre-installed. A lot of them come from Google Fonts. There are a lot of like really, really good accessible body fonts. So to kind of like give you a visual idea of how these fonts all kind of work together, if this is a website section for a wine company, we're Oak and Stone. This is a heading font up here, and it's a little extroverted. It's a little fun and funky. This is the body font, super clean and easy to read. And the button or the call to action item is also a body font. Now, here's what that same graphic would look like if we used that same heading font as a body font. Can you see how much harder it is to read? I'm going to flip back to the first one. And so that's where we're using like a more minimal font. And then here's where we're using a more extroverted font. We just never want to do that. It doesn't make sense. It can be tempting to try to stand out, but it's not accessible. It hurts the eyes, and it's just not good. Okay, now another category of fonts that I love to cover are accent fonts. And these are like bonus fonts that aren't really heading fonts or body fonts. They're sprinkled throughout the brand as a fun little like accent option. So in the Oak and Stone example, we can also add in like a fun little handwritten font up here that's like, hi there, or like located in Los Angeles, California. It's a fun way to sort of bring in like an extra little something, a little maybe personal touch or extra feel to the font hierarchy. Someone said, should the Oak and Stone match their logo font, or is it okay to use a display font that's different from the logo font? That is a really good question, Maria. I say that you do not have to match your heading font to your logo font, but it's also okay if you do. So don't push yourself to match them, because if they're not matching, it does help your logo stand out just a little bit more. But if you really like your logo font and you want to use it for your heading font, that's totally okay. I use my logo font for my heading font and it's been fine. It has not held me back. So you don't have to, but it's okay if you do. So in this hierarchy, the accent font is added to it. It works great. Now, a question that I get a lot is like, should you add an accent font? Does every brand need to have an accent font? Honestly, only if you want to. Don't feel pressured to use it all the time. It's like truffle oil. You want to use it very sparingly. You don't have to use it nearly as much as you use your heading font. It's just a fun little thing that you can sprinkle into your brand to give it like a fun personal touch. Now, I want to give honorable mention to another category of fonts, which are subheading fonts. A subheading font is typically less prominent than a heading font, but more distinct than body text. So it's used for like subtitles or section headings. And I have some visual examples because I know it's like, oh, we've got heading, we've got body, we've got accent. Then what the heck is subheading? Well, if we're looking at a graphic like this, like an e-com site, this up here, how to order a jacket, that's a heading font. And then with this line right here, like will print and ship, that is a subheading font. And then this down here is a body font. So it's something that comes between the heading font and the body font that delivers a little bit of like a punch or a headline, a mini headline of information, but that isn't your body font. Now, there are 3 different ways that I like to choose my subheading fonts. I'm going to walk you through each of these, and they're each going to have a visual example. So, yeah, I want you to be able to see what I'm talking about. The first way is that I will alter a heading font. So I'll take an existing heading font and I'll just change it a little bit. Maybe I'll make it like all caps or maybe a little bit smaller. Another thing I'll do is I'll just add a new font. I'll find a simple font that complements the heading font. And I like to use monospace fonts for this because I think they look really great as subheading fonts. Or I will alter a body font. I'll take an existing body font and maybe I'll make it like bold and all caps or something. So here are those 3 ways, like visually displayed. Option number 1 is to alter a heading font. So if this is our heading font here, then this would be our subheading font. We just made it a little bit smaller and we added a little bit more letter spacing. So it stood out a little bit more. Now, option 2 is to add a whole new font. So we've got this heading font up here, and then we used a monospace font. It doesn't have to be monospace. It can just be a whole new font. And we added this font in, and now we have 3 different typefaces on our screen. We've got 1, 2, and 3. Option 3 is to alter a body font. So in this scenario, we took the existing body font and then we just created an alternative version for our subheading. So we made it a little bit bigger, we added some letter spacing, and we made it all uppercase. I'm curious, do you have a favorite method between these 3? Option 1, option 2, or option 3? Is there something that you tend to find yourself doing when you use subheading fonts? Option 1. Okay, so seems like we like to adjust a heading font or a body font. Okay, cool. Which makes sense because we would prefer to not add too many fonts to a font hierarchy. So if we alter a heading font or alter a body font, options 1 or 3, we're not adding a new typeface. We're just kind of tweaking something that already exists. But you are allowed to add a new font if you want. I'm not going to yell at you. Okay, cool. I hope that all made sense. Now we're going to cover how to create a brand font hierarchy. Your brand font hierarchy is the font version of your color palette. These are your rules and regulations for font usage for your brand. And a quote that I love is make one decision to save thousands. I heard it from Jack Butcher, but the essence of this quote is like, if you do something once, you don't need to overthink it down the road. So when you're building out your brand font menu, you can make strategic decisions so that you don't have to overthink them or change your decisions down the road. I kind of got my start as a web designer. So I use web design font rules, which are that there are typically 4 different styles of a heading font, 3 different styles of a paragraph font, and an accent font sometimes. Now, typically heading 1 through heading 4 get smaller as you descend in that order. So like heading 1 is going to be my biggest font always. And the same rules go for paragraphs 1, 2, and 3. So that's typically how I use my font formulas. Now, I will usually assign the heading font to headings 1, 2, and 3. I will usually assign my subheading font to heading 4, my body font to paragraphs 1, 2, and 3, and an accent font is just um, like my freebie or my substitute. Like I can use it if I want. Now, here are some examples from real brands that I've designed. I designed the Beach Reads and Bubbly website, and here are her fonts. So we've got Perfectly 90s as her heading fonts. We use an italic version for her heading 3. We use an uppercase version with some spacing for heading 4. And then we've just got a very simple, clean body font for her paragraphs. And then we have a fun little accent font that we use as a script font. I designed this one for a lash trainer for my friend Taylor. We use Louise Display, I think is what this one is, and we just mixed regular and italic versions. We used a monospace font for her subheading, and then we used a very simple, clean paragraph font. You're going to notice I always go pretty boring with these, and then a fun little handwritten script for her accent. And then I designed Sari from Not Sorry Arts website. And we went for like a really fun, funky, bubbly letter font for her headings 1 and 2. And then we went with something a little bit more like bold and clean for headings 3 and 4. And then very simple paragraph fonts and no accent font for her because this one was already so funky and fun that we just didn't need it. So here are some things to keep in mind. You definitely want to take into account contrast and legibility. Be sure that your fonts are legible. And I recommend putting your designs at a 50% scale so you can make sure that you can still read whatever you've written, even if it's really small, like on a social media post. And you want to think about cohesiveness. Make sure that your fonts work together. Like your heading, your accent, and your body font should all feel like they belong together. And I'm going to show you more ways to like check for that. Now we're going to talk about how to pair fonts with color palettes. And you might be wondering, which comes first, the fonts or the color palettes? That's like a very valid question. Well, the journey of building out a brand is that you craft a brand personality, and then you choose a design style. And then from there, you build your brand color palette and you choose your font pairings. You don't necessarily have to do one before the other. Fonts can come first or colors can come first. I tend to do color palettes first. Your color palettes are like the film set, and your fonts are like the characters in a movie. So they should go together. I'm going to show you examples of design styles. Don't worry. But when you're thinking about color palettes and fonts, your color palettes are the set, your fonts are the characters. So when we look at like the Grand Budapest Hotel, the color palette would be the film set, and the font pairings would be the characters. They would be the actors and, in their roles and everything. If we think about the Grand Budapest Hotel, it would be really weird if like Voldemort was at the Grand Budapest Hotel, right? That would be a character who did not belong at that film set. That's how they should feel. They should definitely go together. And to demonstrate this point, I use AI to create some mismatched set and character images so you can see like how weird this looks. So obviously these aren't perfect, these are AI, but this is Rick from Rick and Morty on the set of Friends, right? That does not belong. The character does not go in that set. Michael Scott from The Office probably wouldn't be on the boat from Pirates of the Caribbean. It just doesn't really make sense. And Iron Man probably wouldn't be in this sort of disturbing photo of Downton Abbey. I haven't seen the show, but I don't imagine that Iron Man would make sense. And then finally, SpongeBob would be really out of place and probably too optimistic to be on the set of Breaking Bad. So when you're thinking about pairing together your fonts and your colors, think, does this set match these characters? And you can usually feel it out. This is why it's so, so important that your font pairings and your color palettes stem from the same place. So here's how to build your font pairings. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to create a brand personality. Then you're going to choose a design style. Then you're going to choose a heading font. Then you can choose an accent font if you want. Then you'll choose a body font. And then you'll make font pairing guidelines. And this whole process can take less than an hour. It can be really, really fast. So in step one, you're going to craft a brand personality. And that's where you craft a list of 5 to 10 brand personality words. And if you've taken any of our other workshops before, like our color palette workshop, you'll remember the step from that. You want to make a list of 5 to 10 words that describe that brand as if it were a person. And that's what a brand personality is. It's a set of human characteristics or traits attributed to a brand, giving it a unique character in the minds of consumers. And if you need some inspiration for brand personality traits, Chris is going to drop a link in here. We have a list of 500 plus words on our site. It's totally free to use. So if you're a designer working with a client, I recommend sending that list out to your client and being like, why don't you go through here and pick out as many words as you think describe your brand, and then we'll narrow it down to like 5 to 10. And then you want to choose a design style that matches that brand personality. So when we make font pairings, what we're not doing is we're not saying, okay, this personality trait is going to directly translate to this font. So we don't say, okay, if a brand is whimsical, then they use this Tokyo Dreams font. They might end up using that font, but that's not how we get there. After we build that brand personality and we come up with that list of 5 to 10 words that describe a brand, then we want to choose a design style that matches that personality. And a design style is the intentional aesthetic approaches, visual languages, and design techniques that designers can use to convey a brand identity. In short, it's like the vibe of the brand. How does it feel? And there are so many things that can be part of a design style, like the fonts and the colors, the textures and patterns, the types of images that you use, the shapes, like are they rounded shapes? Are they sharp corners? Are they blobs? The filters and effects that you use on photos. Do you use like a grain effect or like a 90s monochrome effect? All of that is part of a design style. And someone was asking earlier about examples of design styles. Here are just a few examples. This is not an exhaustive list. There are so many more, but here are just a few examples of design styles. Like Bold and Vibrant has a completely different vibe or style than like Art Deco or Botanical. And Neutral and Minimal feels a lot different than monochromatic. So there are so many different ways that a brand's design style can go. But after you know what design style you're going for, then you can choose a heading font that matches your design style and your brand personality. So if we're going to start with your heading font, your heading font is the one that should reflect your design style and brand personality. And this is where you can really have some fun. And for every single design style, there are fonts that just tend to fit the vibe best. So like if we want to go for a psychedelic design style, like if our brand personality is like a little bit, I don't know, euphoric and personal and exploratory and magical, and we decide that we want to go with a psychedelic design style, here are some fonts that could match that style that would make great heading fonts. Out of curiosity, are any of these like speaking to you? Does anyone have any favorites from this list? I'm kind of liking that Solway. It feels, yeah, it's kind of like Ricoleta. It's a little bit like nostalgic and fun. I would totally use that font. I also like the flat face sours. That one's cool. Okay, cool. Yeah, so we can see that these fonts definitely match a psychedelic style. And there are a few different ways that you can search for fonts. So you can search for fonts by style. So like, is it a serif, a sans serif? Is it handwritten? Or you can search by font descriptors. So you can look it up by like vintage fonts or psychedelic fonts or Art Deco fonts. Lots of different ways to search for your fonts. After you've chosen your heading font, then you can choose an accent font if you want. You don't have to. You might want to choose an accent font that adds a little bit of personality to your heading font. So it should work with your heading font. This is where I would say you add some sparkle to your brand. It's a distinctive, sometimes decorative font used very sparingly to add a little bit of emphasis or aesthetic appeal to specific parts of the text. Now, an accent font tip that I have is see if your heading font has any additional styles or ligatures or sibling fonts. So, like Louise Display is a great heading font, and they also have an italic version. So, what you could do is you could mix together this heading font and this accent font and kind of having like these dual sibling fonts working together. That's a really fun way. You can do like design your dream website, and dream could be like in the accent font. So it just gives the eye a little bit like something fun and magical to focus on. Then you can choose a body font. So you want to choose a body font that complements your heading fonts and your accent fonts. And there's really there's no wrong way to do this as long as you find yourself something nice and simple and boring. Your body font should always be introverted and easy to read. And you want to choose a simple sans serif or serif that matches the vibe of your heading fonts. So, like I said, here are a couple of my favorite body fonts. You can get free ones. Like these ones are available in Google. Some of these, like Railway, DM Sans is a great Google one. Public Sans is another good one. And if you want to go a little bit like bougier or fancier, you could go for something that's a little bit more premium, that's designed by like a type studio that does not allow people to use it for free. It depends on the project. I will say that I will typically, like if I have a font budget for a client, I would rather use that for their heading fonts than their body fonts, but it really depends on the client. And then after you've chosen your heading font and your accent font and your body font, then you want to make font pairing guidelines, and you just want to put together some like font style guides. So here's typically what I like to define in my font style guides. I like to define the font's role. So like, is it going to be a heading font, subheading font, body font? I like to define the font family, in this case, Ricoleta, and then the font weight that I'm using, in this case, medium. Then I like to define the style. So is it going to be like regular or italic? And then I like to define the letter spacing. In this case, 0, meaning I'm going to use the regular letter spacing that the font comes installed with. The line height, I'm going to do 100%, meaning the regular height. I'm not going to like shrink it down or expand it. And then the text case, I'm going to use it as normal. I'm not going to try to make it all uppercase or all lowercase. I'm just going to go with it as normal. Okay. So let's do this activity together for a real brand. So we are going to create a brand personality, making that list of 5 to 10 words. So in this case, I would maybe go relaxed, warm, authentic, free-spirited, romantic, and natural. Maybe this is for like a boho jewelry company. And then after I have that brand personality, I want to choose a design style that matches that personality. So that personality kind of feels like the bright and warm design style to me. It's soft, it's warm, it's a little romantic. So this is the design style that I'm going to go with. Then I want to choose a heading font that matches that design style. And in this case, I've decided to go for Ricoleta Alt because I like the softness and it matches the design style that I'm going for. Then I want to choose an accent font that adds a little bit of personality. And I decided to go for Keenstone or Kinestone. I never know how to say this one because it feels really handwritten and fun. And I can see like if this is a jewelry company leaving little notes or thank you notes for clients in this font and being like, hope you love it or something, and just giving it a little bit more of like a handwritten, hand touch feel. And then I would choose a body font. In this case, maybe I would go with one of my favorites, a Perisou Pro, or maybe I would go with Public Sans, something really simple sans serif. And then I would make font pairing guidelines. So it's not enough to choose those fonts. What we really want to do is make these guidelines to see how they all look together. And so here's how everything comes together. And what do you think? Do you like these font pairing guidelines? Do you feel like it matches the original personality that we described? This like warm, romantic, soft brand, relaxed brand. I think Ricoletta always like connects with relaxed vibes. Yay, good. Okay. So again, here is the font pairing checklist for you. Brand personality, design style, heading font, accent font, body font, font pairing guidelines. Now, it makes sense because we don't necessarily want to like start with the body font, because what we're trying to do is like use the body font to round out everything. And we don't even necessarily start with the heading font, which can be very tempting. I will say, like, if you're doing a VIP day with a client, it can be so tempting to be like, okay, let's pick a font for you. But really, I encourage you to take the little bit of time it takes to make a brand personality and choose a design style. Now, you can use a pre-made design style like some that we offer, but you can also just like go on Pinterest and like find a vibe, like disco cowgirl or something, and find a vibe that you're going for and then choose fonts that match that. Oh, but you might be thinking, Sam, we didn't even talk about colors. And like the whole point of this workshop is how to match your color palettes to your font pairings. I know. I put so much thought into this workshop, and I was even shocked when like by the end I was like, oh, we're not even really talking about colors. And I love talking about colors, but we don't actually directly match color palettes to fonts. The color palettes and the font pairings should stem from the same design style. Type a 1 if that makes sense. If after everything we've gone through, does it make sense that we connect through the common denominator of our font pairings and our, I'm sorry, of our design style? Okay, good, good, good. It seems like it makes sense. I want to make sure. So here's that journey again. Brand personality, choose a design style, and then make your color palettes and your font pairings. So let's test it. Okay, here's a design style that we might be going for. Pretend that the brand personality matches this design style, neutral and minimal. So here would be some fonts that match a neutral and minimal design style. We could go with Jen Wagner's Editor's Note Light for the heading font. We could go for Sacker's Italian for a fun little accent. And then we could go for DM Sans for a body font. Here would be the color palette, these like rich, warm, nutty tones. And then here would be the font pairings. But what if we want to change the colors? Like, what if our client loved these fonts, but they were like, oh, I hate brown? Totally okay. Because as long as we stem from the same design style of neutral and minimal, we can change out those colors for a different neutral and minimal color palette, and we can still use those same fonts and they match, right? They look great with either palette. Now, what if we want to change the fonts? What if she or the client really liked these browns, but they were like, oh, I don't want to be too fancy or like too elegant? Well, then we can go with different fonts that still match the design style of neutral and minimal. So these all go with the neutral and minimal style. Super fun, right? As long as your font pairings and your color palettes stem from the same design style, they should always match. They should always feel like they go together. And to help you with this, I made a fun little tool because I think your font pairings should be easy and fun. So I created the font pairing kit. This is an expertly curated database of font pairings sorted by price, by design style, and functionality. And it should help you create a brand font menu in 60 seconds or less. I'm going to show you how it works, but before I do, I'm going to show you some of the stuff inside because it's really awesome. It has 30 of my favorite body fonts. So I have listed out my favorite body fonts and I've noted which ones have a free version available, whether or not they're in Canva. I've linked them all, and you can sort them by serif or sans serif, which is super fun. It also includes 200 plus heading font options that are all sorted by price and design style. So you're going to be able to choose your design style and then go through and look at free fonts and premium fonts, which I'll show you in a second. It also has a quick font pairing template. So you've got a great editable Canva template that you can use, and font style guide templates. So you can style your font pairings and add them to your brand guidelines super, super easily. These are editable in Canva, so fun and so easy to edit. And we wanted to give a special gift to anyone who came to the live workshop. You can get $30 off the font pairing kit with code Font Lover. And Chris is linking the font pairing kit in the chat. And you can use code Font Lover until October 4th for $30 off. And that works with bundles, which is really cool because you can save like $130 if you bundle with other tools. So the most common package we have is the color palette builder and the font pairing kit combined. And I'm going to show you how this works because it's super, super fun and we're going to build a brand together. So the brand that we're going to build is called Spark Joy. So Spark Joy is an online therapy resource for millennial and Gen Z women. And their brand personality is optimistic, bold, motivating, friendly, approachable, trendy, supportive, and diverse. Okay, so we have their brand personality here. Let's pretend that the client prepared that for us. So now we're going to go in, and this is the actual font pairing kit. So what we are going to do is go to step 1, and we're going to choose a design style. And this is going to have, let me get rid of these. Okay, this is going to have all of the different design styles. So the mood boards, information about the style, some visual elements that we associate with the style, and values that we associate with the style. So we can scroll through, and keeping this brand personality in mind, we can see which design style we think matches this vibe. So because we're going for something that's like optimistic, bold, friendly, approachable, like I'm not sure if Art Deco is the right match for that. Bright and warm might be really fun. I think we could totally make bright and warm work. I'm not sure woodsy and rustic makes sense. I think cosmic and ethereal could be super fun. But the style that really comes to mind when I think of Spark Joy is bold and vibrant. I think if we're going for something really fun and bold and like approachable and innovative, bold and vibrant is the style I want to go for. And these values match a lot of the brand personality values that the client gave us. So I'm going to go for a bold and vibrant style. So then I'm going to go to step 2 and I'm going to choose a heading font. And I can see all of these different design styles and I can click into each one and I will get to see more information specifically about the fonts that we associate with that style. So I can look up, or I can see keywords to find fonts like this if I want to search on like Creative Market or Etsy or something. And I'm going to get a list of free fonts that I can use for this design style. So if like the client doesn't really have any budget for premium fonts, I will have a bunch of free fonts here that I can shop. Or if they do have a little bit of budget for premium fonts, here's a curated list of some really fun premium fonts that match this design style with previews so that I can see them and sort of start to picture how they look. So in this case, let's pretend that the client does have a little bit of a font budget. So now I'm going to show you how I would actually shop for these fonts. I really liked this, this bold and bubbly font, but I do want it to be really accessible. So I'm not sure I would want to go for something quite so funky for this client. I really like the idea of trying this font. This is Dialog, I think it's called. It's like a sans serif with a really fun, like funky little twist. So let's see, Spark Joy is the name of this brand. So I'm just going to type out Spark Joy and see kind of, oh, I like how that looks. That's super fun. And I can get a preview of what that font looks like. I think that would make a really fun heading font. And then maybe I want to find a accent font or something to pair with it. So do I like this one? See, that's way too similar to my heading font, so I don't think I would go with that one. Proto Mono might be a really fun accent font. It's just like a little extra thing. So like I could say, you deserve to feel joy. And I can get a preview for how that font looks. Okay, I can see these working really well together. I can use the Dialog as the heading font. And then I can use Proto as the accent or subheading font. And I know that they're going to work well together because they stem from the same design style. So now I've chosen a heading font and a heading font and an accent font. Now I can choose a body font. So I can go to step 3, shop these different body fonts, and I can sort by all body fonts or sans serif fonts or serifs if I really want a serif, or I can go for free fonts or ones that I know are going to be available in Canva. I'm going to switch back to all body fonts, and I'm going to go with, let's see, I know I want something free because we spent money on premium fonts over here. So let's go with Public Sans. Public Sans is a really great body font, looks amazing, consistent, has a good amount of font weights for variability. So I'm going to go with Public Sans. And then I can go to the font pairing style guides, and I can use this template, and I can put all the fonts together and have a full set of style guides where I bring in each one of these. But that really, I mean, it took a little extra long because I was explaining it, but in just about a minute, we were able to choose a design style, choose a heading font, an accent font, and a body font, and know that they all are going to work together because they're stemming from the same design style. And that's how the font pairing kit works. Now, if we wanted to pair it with a color palette, what I would use is the color palette builder, and I would flip the design style over to the bold and vibrant design style. If I wanted some inspiration, I could click this Pinterest icon and see brands that tend to use the bold and vibrant style. So I could kind of get some color inspo here. I really like this vibe. I think this is the vibe I want to go for this brand. So what I'm going to do next is follow this color palette formula. So I'm going to add a couple light colors, and then I'm going to add some nice, bright, vibrant colors. I really like these greens and blues together, these really bright blues. And then I'm going to choose a dark color, make sure I have enough contrast. And then what I can do is I can test all my pairings to view all the text and background contrast scores so we can see which ones are actually like legible. They're going to have a check mark if they have a contrast score of 4.5 or higher. I can click show compliant pairings to view the pairs that have the highest contrast. So like in this case, maybe I like these guys the most. I really love that bright blue and this combo. I think these are my favorites. And then I can click show palette to view the full color palette and my favorite high contrast pairs. And just like that, we've got a color palette that matches the font pairings, and we've got everything done for our client's project. Super, super fun. Chris is going to put the link to, actually, I can put that right here. That is the link for the font pairing kit. And just as a reminder, you can use code FONTLOVER to get $30 off until Friday. Super, super fun. Okay, now with just a few minutes left, I'm going to go over some common font mistakes and how to fix them, because this is something that you might not know that you're doing that's super fixable. Mistake number 1 would be overcomplicating the font pairings, which is where you use too many different fonts, and that can make like a really cluttered and inconsistent look. So like this as a font hierarchy is super chaotic. This does not feel good or look good. There are just too many fonts in here. Instead, I would recommend sticking to 2 to 3 fonts, usually one for headings, one for your body text, and maybe an additional one for an accent or subheading. This is just going to ensure consistency and clarity. With fonts, less is more, usually. Another mistake is ignoring contrast. So that's when there's a lack of contrast between headings and subheadings and body text that can lead to like a really flat and unengaging layout. So in this example, like this is a website section, it's really hard to tell where the eye should go. This should be a lot bigger. This should have a different font style. The heading font and the body font and the call to action font are all the same. It just like really doesn't feel good. So the solution here is to use varying font sizes, font weights, and styles to create a clear visual hierarchy and guide the reader's eye so that they know what to focus on. And then another mistake is just disregarding the brand identity. This is where you would choose fonts that don't align with the brand's personality or message. So if the brand's personality is bright, bubbly, youthful, energetic, and bold, you probably wouldn't want to use these two fonts as a heading font and body font. This heading font is like very traditional and formal and fancy, and this body font's like a kind of a traditional serif. That just doesn't feel good. That doesn't feel like the brand personality. So the solution here is to choose fonts that reflect the brand's personality, character, and design style. Okay, and here are some of my 2024 trends and font predictions. Before I do, I'm gonna just take a peek at the chat box. Do you have a suggestion for how to find a logo or header font that has a design style match for a brand based on a character? So if you are shopping for fonts on like Creative Market, what I like to do, like let's say that we're searching for display fonts. I will type out a brand name. So like I will just choose any one of these fonts and type like Creative Magic Co. Like if we want to see what the uppercase C looks like. Then I'm just going to go back to view all the fonts. How do I do this in here? There's like a way. Oh yeah, here we go. Creative Magic Co. So then what you can do is scroll through and start to see like, oh, are there any fonts that have the letter that I'm looking for or display the C or like the G in a way that I really like. So I like to shop for fonts like that. And that is Creative Market. Are these only available for Canva? So Liz, the style guides are in Canva, but the font pairing kit is just, it's a website link. So it's not in Canva, it's just its own app. Can someone utilize two fonts for their heading font or logo? Yeah, you can totally mix and match two fonts for your logo. Jen does that. Jen Wagner does that for hers. So she's got like this tall serif font, and then she uses a script font here. You can totally mix and match for your logo. Okay, I'm gonna go over some font trends and predictions, and then I will come back at the end to answer a couple questions. These are just some trends, things that I see are popping off really well this year. 80s and 90s editorial, whether that's through fonts or colors or like textures or patterns. Think minimalistic sans serifs, confident serifs, bold headline style fonts. They kind of have a soft nostalgia to them. They don't seem outdated. They seem like revived. So you're going to see a lot of stuff that feels like semi-nostalgic, but not all the way back to the 70s. Nostalgic comfort is super, super in. So these are like nostalgic 70s style fonts that are a lot more rounded and cozy and comfy, like this Camp Coffee or Recoleta, which we see everywhere these days. Chamberlain Coffee is another example. They, I think, made their own font for their brand. Chobani Yogurt also uses this style font. Ligature serifs. Okay, this is a really fun vibe. And for the folks who are asking if you can like mix serif and other letter, or I'm sorry, script with other letters, you might love this vibe. This is where you mix together fancy wedding style scripts with modern, sleek serif fonts to make like a really fun combo typeface. Super cool, super fun, looks gorgeous. And these are just so popular right now. And then 3D experimental and abstract fonts are also popping. So anything by like TanType or Taylor Penton has a really great collection of typefaces as well. Bubbly, funky, abstract fonts really help you stand out in a sea of sameness. So if you're looking to really stand out your brand, a 3D or abstract font could totally be the way that you do that. Oops, accidentally clicked something. Okay. Thank you so much for your patience. What questions do you have? I'm going to be looking in the chat. I want to make sure I answer all of your questions. Is it better to use a serif or sans serif font for your body text? Honestly, either. It depends on the project. I have designed a lot of brands, and I don't know if I've ever used a serif font for body. So I personally prefer sans serif, but you can totally use serif. I prefer sans serif fonts. What's an example of the need for 4 heading fonts? I cannot think of an example where you would actually need 4 heading fonts. I would restrict it to 2 at max. 4 I think is a little too many. I will be sharing the replay later. I do all my designs in Canva. I use Canva, I use Figma and Adobe Illustrator. It's really just like whatever tool is best for the project. For things like presentations like this, I like Canva, and for brand guidelines, I like Canva. But for web design, I prefer Figma. Any recommendations for clients really struggling to nail down a single design style? So what I like to do is I like to show them the color palette builder, and I like to scroll through these different design styles and ask them like if there are any styles that really feel like they connect with, and if there's anything that they definitely don't like. And I think they just kind of don't know what they like until they see it, or they don't know what they really don't like until they see it. And I like to dive into the mood boards and the Pinterest boards too, and really nail like what parts of the style that they like or don't like. And try to get them to narrow down to 1 to 2 styles. I think if you're just asking them generally what design style they like, you're going to maybe come up short because they don't speak design or they don't fully understand this world. But once they see it and they understand the strategy behind taking their brand personality and putting it through the lens of a design style, they're usually a lot easier to work with. Oh, where'd my chat go? Okay. I already have a logo made by a designer. Do I need to use those same font choices on my website? Amy, no, you can use like whatever, like you can make your own font choices. The logo font and the font that you use for your brand do not have to match. Just make sure that your design style still welcomes the logo that you created. What are the rules for Canva Pro use? Canva, I would check the Canva Pro rules. I don't work for Canva, so I can't really speak to that, but they have a lot of rules. But you can use the Canva free plan for a lot of stuff. So if you want to play around or dabble with Canva, you can. They're pro fonts. They do have pro fonts that you get access to if you have a pro plan. So like I'm going through Canva now. These are all my fonts that I've paid for and installed. But if you see a crown next to it, that's a Canva Pro font. So you can use it in your designs for free. Honestly, for that reason alone, I think Canva Pro is worth it because you get so many fonts. I mean, we're still in the A's here and I've been scrolling for however long. The links for the design style Pinterest boards, Natalie, are in the color palette builder and the font pairing kit. Are there licensing rules for how we use the fonts? Yes, there are. Chris can put a link to the Creative Market font pairing or the font licensing rules, but it's going to vary depending on where you buy your fonts. So definitely check like the source of where you're buying them. Usually you buy one for your desktop if you're using it for designs, and then you buy one for your website if you're using it on a website. Okay. Do I make my logos in Canva? Diamond, I typically don't. I use either Figma or Adobe Illustrator, and I actually have a workshop on my YouTube page that's all about how to make logos in an hour. So if you want to dive further into logos, you can go to our YouTube and see a whole workshop about logo creation. All right, I'm going to close out. I know we went a little bit over time. Thank you all so much for sticking around and for asking these great questions, and just for showing up to the workshop. I love doing these workshops. I think they're so much fun. And I hope that you feel more comfortable using fonts and pairing them with your color palettes once you understand the process. Thank you all so much. And thank you, Chris, for running the chat. Chris, you want to say hi?
Thanks for coming, everybody. I've got some code to get back to. I'm building another tool for the Color Palette Studio. And also we posted a update to our Color Buddy free Chrome extension yesterday. So we fixed a small bug with that, and it just turned a year old. So if you don't have the free Color Buddy Chrome extension, definitely get that. And check out the font pairing guide. Sam made that. It was really cool. And my personal favorite is the is the color palette builder. But I'm about to make an update to that that will make it even better, and everybody that has it gets that update. So I just love coding for you all. Thank you so much for using my tools. And if you have any requests, you can reach out to Sam.
Yeah. And Chris did mention the Color Buddy, which did get an update. So what we did with that tool is the Color Buddy is a free Chrome extension, and you can create profiles. So in this case, like I would do Spark Joy, Joy for the brand that we were working on today. And I would, in the color palette builder, after I made that color palette, I would click generate URL and click copy, and it's going to make this URL that has all the information. And then I would paste that into the Color Buddy and click populate. And it is going to add in all the brand colors and my favorite high contrast pairs. What's awesome about this is I can have this pinned right to my browser, and I can flip between hex code, RGB, and CMYK to copy these color codes super, super easily. So it works really well with the color palette builder to give you an opportunity to have different profiles and different color palettes saved right to your browser. This is like one of my favorite tools that we have, and it's totally free. So it's great if you have clients who you want to send the Color Buddy to, because they can have this browser extension and not mess up their color palettes that you put together for them. All right. Thank you so much. I hope you all have a great rest of your week, and I will see you at the next workshop. Bye.